Hey YouTube. Today we're talking about my HK P7 PSP in 9mm. First, the HK P7 PSP is HK's answer to the Western Police's request for a pistol to replace their Walther PPs and 32 ACP, because they are found to be inadequate for modern crime and the growing problem of terrorism in West Germany, so they wanted to switch to a 9mm. And the ones that answered that call were HK's P7, SIG's P6, and Walther's P5. In this case, it's the P7. And one of the requirements was to be ready to be pulled from the holster and fired with one hand. And SIG's response was a decocker only lever to make it double action, single action handgun. Walther's is the same thing. It was a decocker only, double action, single action. And HK, they went a different route with this thing. Their decocking, their squeeze decocking or cocker mechanism. How basically the safety works is when this is not pulled, the trigger does nothing. Squeeze this, and the gun fires. The gun's basically pretty much completely dead until you squeeze that. You have to apply a little bit of pressure to it to get it to cock the gun, but there's not too much to hold it in place. But it's also very loud. It takes a little bit getting used to, and it can feel a bit counterintuitive for a lot of people compared to like a standard 1911 type grip safety you usually see on the back of the gun. But I actually prefer this over grip safeties because sometimes some grip safeties for me do not like to activate. Also, the P7s, at least the PSPs, they have a heel-mounted magazine release, which works into that notch right there. Although later on the P7 M8s, they incorporate a lever style, sort of like the modern PAL release on modern HKs. And of course the M13, which is the double stack version of this, is a 8-round single stack gun. The M13, which holds 13 rounds, is a double stack and has a much wider grip than this, which is already fairly wide for a single stack gun. It also sits very low into the hand, so the recoil and muzzle flip isn't as much as your standard 9mm. So it's actually pretty accurate. And supposedly it's also the first pistol to incorporate a 3-dot sight system, but I'm not 100% sure on that. It's just from what I've heard. Also, it's not a standard Browning tilting barrel design. It's actually a sort of gas delayed blowback, which I'll show you after I take it apart. Zipped up. Let's see if it'll fight with me or not. There it goes. I'll show you the first frame. See, the barrel's fixed in position, so it has greater mechanical accuracy than a Browning style. Also polygonally rifled, and it has a fluid chamber to aid in extraction, but it does jack up your brass quite a bit. But the way it works, see if I can get it to come out, is this is a little gas piston right here, which goes into a tube in here. And basically when the gun fires, gas vents from the chamber into that tube and pushes against this piston until the chamber level drops after the barrel leaves, if the bullet leaves the barrel. And that's when it will allow the gas pressure to go back down, and the slide will go back. The Desert Eagle actually works in a somewhat similar principle, although I think theirs is a little bit more simplified. Also be aware of on the gas piston right here, do not use metal brushes to clean this, as it will eat away at the gas rings right here. Let's see if we can get the camera to focus on it. It'll eat away at these gas rings right here, which will basically slowly turn the P7 into a regular blowback, and that is a bad thing. Because then the piston will become over gas, and it will beat itself to death. I might have to do this off screen. Oh, nope, got it the first time. Also, you don't need a magazine to lock the slide back, as there's a tab right here that allows you to lock it open. Another neat feature about the decocking lever is it also acts as a slide release. I'll show you again on this side. See? So it works as somewhat like a multi-tool, kind of like the P5's decocker also works as a slide release. Another thing, problem to be aware of for the P7 series is because the gas pistons right here, this part of the frame does get particularly hot with extended firing, such as like 3 or 4 magazines worth. Though most guns get that way anyway, so it's not a huge deal. And HK's attempt to mediate that was they put a plastic heat shield right here to help prevent you from burning your hand on the metal frame here. They also made the trigger a little bit larger for gloved hands. And they made the trigger on the M8 and the M13 out of plastic instead of metal like this one. I actually kind of prefer the metal trigger, but it does get warm along with the frame. And it's also, of course, a striker fired handgun, as you can tell from the cocking indicator coming out. And I guess I'll show you the trigger pull. A little bit of take up, and you hit a wall. A little bit extra squeeze from there. And it fires. I mean, it's not the best trigger in the world, but it's better than most striker fired guns. The reset. Pretty much it'll let almost all the way out for it to reset again. Look at the other side. And this particular example is made in December of 1994. And HK stopped making the P7 PSPs, I believe, at some point in the 90s. I know they stopped making the P7 series, I believe, is in 2013 is when they quit making them. I think they made like one last run of M8s and they just stopped making them, unfortunately. Since in my personal opinion, I think this is probably one of the best handguns ever produced. Unfortunately, it's also very expensive. Even back then, it was one of the most expensive handguns out there. I mean, even HK rolled ads trying to justify to people in advertising why it's the most expensive handgun in the world, in their words. Which is part of the reason why it didn't make much success in the commercial market, because of its price. Because the price is, I think you could probably get 2 SIGs or 2 Berettas or multiple Glocks, which for most police departments they couldn't justify that kind of expenditure for something like this. With the only police aware of that bought these or outside Germany is the New Jersey State Police. Actually used these for a number of years. I think they replaced these with SIGs, I think. But they're the ones that helped basically create the M8 series, because a lot of officers didn't like using the heel release, and they wanted something closer to what they're used to, like a thumb release. So HK, I guess they couldn't engineer a button release for the P7, so they created the lever style. There's a mixture of that, and one also was being tested by the U.S. Army to replace the 1911. The P7 was also in there as a HK's entry, or one of HK's entries. I think they put the P9 in there as well. But anyway, thanks for stopping by, and hope you have a nice day.